Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to talk about a new Sparky mechanic that I discovered some time ago and recently revealed to the public, and I'm going to explain how to perform it and why exactly does it work. Okay, so in order to understand this, we need to go back to the basic mechanic, which is the double hack. Now you'll probably know this mechanic. It is a fairly easy mechanic and it's one of the first thing that you learn when you start using Sparky in operations, but if you're a beginner, I'll show you what it is. So basically you deploy Sparky, of course, you activate the remote, and she's going to target the closest defense or the most damaged defense. You flare another defense, and as soon as she hacks, you get an instant remote that you can use, which in this case was used to hack the mortar. So the special thing about this, if you don't know, is how there is little to no delay between the two hacks, as you can see in this slow motion clip. So this is the only way that you can get a double hack. You need to flare the defense, because if you don't, this happens. As you can see in this slow motion clip, you basically get a delay between the first hack and the second hack. Now, why are we even talking about this? Because everyone knows about the double hack. And the reason is that there is a big question to be answered. And the question is, why can we even do a double hack in the first place? And the answer to that question is that we have no idea. This is just how the game was programmed. But there's something that we do know, and that is the scenario in which the double hack works. And that scenario, it's fairly simple. We have Sparky. Sparky has a target that was previously flared, and after she hacks that targeted defense, she gets another remote that works instantly. And the thought that led to the discovery of this mechanic, it's basically this. Is there any way that I can reproduce the scenario after the first hack? Because after Sparky hacks the first defense, the one that was flared, it no longer is the target because it becomes a friendly structure. So what happens is that when you get the second remote, you are no longer in the starting scenario. So if you use the second remote, you're not going to get a third one. So if you want to get a third remote, you need to reproduce the starting scenario, which allowed you to have the second remote, right? You need to reproduce that scenario again before you use that second remote, which means that you have to flare a defense before she actually hacks the second defense. And again, we don't know why that happens. We don't know why in that specific scenario, Sparky gets an instant remote. But what we are basically doing is exploiting that knowledge and see if it can be applied anywhere. Now I'm going to show you how to actually perform it and the exact steps that you need to follow to make it work. As you can see, I've marked two defenses, the mortar and the shock launcher. The mortar is going to be the second defense to be hacked because it has more damage, and the shock launcher is going to be the third one. So now here we're going to activate the remote and then flare the first defense that we want to hack. I'm going to let the clip roll, and then after that we're going to analyze it. So what exactly happened here? So here we can see Sparky hacking the defense that was flared. And you also probably noticed that I threw a flare onto the shock launcher. It didn't land yet, but you'll see what that is for in a moment. Here, after the first hack, I immediately pressed the remote and Sparky targeted the mortar, and you can see it by the circle around it. And now you can see that the flare that I threw previously landed on the shock launcher. So after the flare lands, we successfully recreated the scenario that we wanted, which is Sparky has now a flare target, and then she hacks a defense. And we know, again, that in this scenario, she is going to get an instant hack after the first one. And here you can see that after we used the remote, the shock launcher was immediately hacked. And this is exactly what happens in a double hack. You might have also noticed that the flare on the shock launcher landed in the exact same frame as the mortar, and that is pretty much the limit because you want the flare to land after the circle has appeared. That signifies the target, so the circle that appears around the mortar, but before Sparky actually performs the hack. Now, it's important to understand that it doesn't really matter where you throw the flare, because I could have thrown that flare on the mortar itself by following the same rules, so after the circle and before the hack. Because, for example, if there was a fourth defense that I wanted to hack in this clip, I could have not thrown all the flares on the mortar because the first flare would have actually succeeded. It would have given me an instant remote, but after I hack the motor, it becomes a friendly structure. And the second flare, that it's supposed to give me the fourth instant remote, it's not going to work because it's going to land on a friendly structure. So it's usually good practice to just throw all the flares that you need to throw on the last defense that will be hacked. Now you might wonder, why doesn't Sparky hack the defense that we decided to throw the flare on? And the answer is that when Sparky performs a double hack, right, when we click that second remote, she starts kind of like an animation. Like you can see, she moves around. And in that animation, she will ignore the flare, basically. She will, acknowledge the flare. She knows that that's a target, but she will not hack or move towards it. And when I say it doesn't matter which defense you throw the flare on, I mean literally. You can actually throw the flare on any defense on the map. It doesn't need to be in range, it just needs to be a defense. And again, this just goes to show that during the animation, Ever doesn't really care about the flare. She acknowledged the targets, right? But she will not hack or move towards it. There is an advantage to this, and it's that you could learn the timings of a specific position in the map, for example, in operations, and so that you just need to learn a single timing, and it does not matter where Sparky is on the map. The drawback of this technique, though, is that if you mess up the timings, it's really bad because Sparky is going to start moving towards the defense, and since it's not in range, she will actually move out of the smoke. Okay, guys, so this is pretty much all there is to this mechanic. It is a pretty hard mechanic. It needs to be practiced a lot, of course, because if you attack in operations, you cannot afford to mess up the attack just because you tried to do this. So I hope you enjoyed this quick explanation. It is my first tutorial, so it's a little bit scuffed, but I'll try to improve on that. And yeah, have a good one.